Good morning, students. This is Mohan Rao. We are senior zoology faculty. So in the previous session, I explained in detail regarding the problems that are all associated with the infertility in male as well as the female. And there in the class, we discussed more detailedly about the treatment for the various problems in a male as well as even in a female also. And here the point is, even after the treatment is given to a couple, if the couple are not in a position to give birth to the children, then what is the remedy for that? And in today's session, I am going to focus on that particular part. We shall discuss about certain type of techniques that are all available to the couple in order to have the children. Then in this class, what is the technical definition of these ARTs, and thereafter what are all the variety of ARTs that are all available to the couple nowadays. Then in which condition generally we do go with these kind of technologies, and thereafter what is the success rate of each and every method. About all the things, let us see in a detailed way in today's session, so that I can finish up this chapter with this session today. Coming to the technical definition of these ARTs, and here that is a method that is available to the couple. They can adapt these type of methods or technologies so that they can have the children. Coming to this definition, once you see that a couple could be assisted to have children through certain specialized techniques, commonly known as assisted reproductive technologies. And here we should concentrate on this. These are nothing but a certain specialized technologies that are all used by a couple in order to have children. And such a kind of all the technologies together we can consider as the assisted reproductive technologies. Assisted reproductive technologies. The abbreviated form of this one here, it includes ARTS. Then what are these ARTS and how many types of ARTS are available to us, and in which cases generally the couple used to use these type of ARTs? Let us see now in a detail. Coming to here the types of this ARTs, it includes, one is IVF. The IVF stands for in vitro fertilization, and this is otherwise known as test tube baby also in general terms. So this is one method that is available to us and to have a children. Whereas the second type of method here, it includes GIFT. The gamete intra-fallopian transfer is one more method that is available to us. And thereafter, the next one is ICSI. It includes here intracytoplasmic sperm injection. So it includes the intracytoplasmic sperm injection is the fourth one. And whereas here you can see the last one, that is AI, artificial insemination, and it has got another name also here, intrauterine insemination. And then here the two terms also mentioned in this here area. One is ZIFT, whereas here IUT. Generally, whenever we go for the test tube babies, in this case, that IVF is followed by ZIFT and here IUT. The ZIFT, it stands for zygote intra-fallopian transfer. Zygote intra-fallopian transfer, or we can here have another method, intrauterine transfer. So these are all the four different types of here ARTs that are all available to us. Let us see more detailedly about each type of this ART and what are the success rates of these here ARTs, and in which condition generally we go with these ARTs, and what is the procedure it includes in each and every ART. Let us see now in a detailed way. Right. Coming to the first one, here it includes IFE. I'll explain about this IFE in a detailed way. So first here method, here it is IFE, IVF, in vitro fertilization. Right, here I'd like to give you the technical meaning of the word, that is in vitro. This means here, if any kind of fertilization takes place outside the body of a living organism, then it is known as in vitro fertilization. here it takes place, as I said, outside the body of living organism. By creating the similar conditions in the female body or living organism body. And here you should be aware about even another word, IVO. Here is another one. Then what does it mean then? If at all the fertilization takes place within the living organism, then such a kind of fertilization is known as in vivo fertilization. Let us see here. It takes place inside the body of the living organism. If it takes place, then we do consider it as in vivo fertilization. But here now my concept is in vitro fertilization. Then what happens here? Generally in this in vivo here fertilization, we do collect the sperm either from the father, and here we should use the term husband. Here you do go for husband, or you do collect the sperm from donor. In the same way, the ovum is collected from here the mother, wife, or we do collect it from donor. Then these two are get collected in a laboratory condition, and where the similar conditions of mother uterine is here available, such a kind of conditions are created and allow these two to get fertilized. Then it leads to here the formation of successful zygote. Zygote will be formed. Then generally when do we go for such a kind of here IVF, in vitro fertilizations? And here wherever in a female body the suitable environmental conditions are not there for the fertilization, generally we do go with this here in vitro fertilization method. And this is, as I said, otherwise known as here test tube baby. Test tube baby. Here we should remember one point clearly. Test tube baby doesn't mean that the growth of the baby takes place within the test tube. But here technically test tube baby here it includes fertilization process. It takes place outside the here female body in a laboratory where the similar conditions of the female here reproductive system is created. Then it is known as here a test tube baby, or else we call it as IVF. And here the point is, this IVF is naturally here followed by embryo transfer. So resulting of the fertilization, zygote will be formed, and within the zygote, cleavages will be taken place. Resulting of that, here it gets developed into the embryo. Then this embryo will be get transfer into the two different places. One is here the place of a fallopian tube, and another one is the place that is uterus. Based on that, this embryo transfer is here get classified into two different things. I will explain about the two things now. And before that, here who started or who successfully done this test tube baby first in the world, thereafter in India, let us see now here clearly. The first test tube baby that was born in the world is in England. It happened in England. So I will tell you the story of this one. And coming to here, two couple are there, and they are from here England, and the mother name here is Leslie, and coming to here the father, her name is Gilbert Brown. Gilbert Brown. Then here the ovum is collected from Leslie, as well as the sperm is get collected from the Gilbert. Both of them here fertilized in a here laboratory, resulting of that the zygote is formed. So that here they give birth to the first test tube baby in the world. Here the first test tube baby She was female. And here her name, here Joy Brown. Joy Brown. Julius, here Louise. Louise Joy Brown is the name of a woman who took birth by this technique first in this world. It was happened on 25th July in 1978. And the two scientists contributed for development of this baby. And the names of the two here doctors, one is Dr. Patrick Steptoe is one doctor, whereas the second one is a doctor here, Robert Edward. And here Robert Edward even got Nobel Prize here in the year 2010 for his research on the test tube baby. Here Nobel Prize also he received, right? So on 2010 for his research on this. So this is the first test tube baby. So and this test tube baby here took place in England. And here from Leslie and Gilbert Brown, first test tube baby Louise Joy Brown took place here on 25th July in 1978. Two doctors contributed for this development. One is a Patrick here Steptoe, the another one is Robert Edward. For his research, the Robert Edward have got the Nobel Prize in the year 2010. Then what is the condition and who was the first test tube baby take part here in India? Let us see now. And the first test tube baby coming to India is Kumari Harsha. In India, and the doctor name who developed the test tube baby is Dr. Indra Hinduja. Dr. Indra Hinduja developed the first test tube baby in India. It took place here on August 6th. August 6th in 1986. And here the name of the test tube baby in India is Kumari Harsha. And it took place in Mumbai in KEM hospital. There is a bit controversy regarding the first test tube baby in India. And there was the case here filed against to this. And here the another doctor, Dr. Subhash Mukherjee from Kolkata, developed the first test tube baby in India and second here test tube baby in the world. And here Dr. Subhash Mukherjee, he is from Kolkata, developed the first test tube baby in the year 1978 itself on October 3rd in 1978 itself. And initial name of the test tube baby was given like Durga. Later her name is get changed as here Panupriya Agarwal. Panupriya Agarwal, her name later on get changed. So here according to this, even it was taken place in 1978, few months later to the first test tube baby in the world. But by the time the case was filed against this Subhash Mukherjee and how he did here such a kind of experiment in India without the financial support and all these things, so that here he was humiliated because of his pioneer experiment regarding this test tube baby. So that here he humiliated a lot and he committed suicide also regarding that. Thereafter here in 1986 Here Indra Hinduja developed a first test tube baby here in India, and here it was, and her name was Harsha. It took place in Mumbai in KEM hospital. So this is regarding the story of here test tube baby in India as well as in the world. And here once this the zygote is formed, then what happens, let us see now. And it is followed by two important techniques. I said here, once this fertilization is done here in a laboratory under here the conditions of the uterus, then the zygote will be formed, and this zygote will be get transferred into the fallopian tube, or else it can be get transferred into the intrauterine. Here when you see this one, this technique, the embryo transfer, if at all, see this, once the fertilization is done and the zygote, here is a point, with a 8 blastomeres or less than that, here within the zygote, the number of blastomeres are 8 or less than the 8 if blastomeres are present. It is a very important point, even for the medical entrance examination. You keep it in the mind. See this here, with up to 8 blastomeres stage, if a zygote or embryo is available to us, then the zygote or embryo must be get transported into the fallopian tube. Here it is, fallopian tube. In such a condition, that embryo transfer technique is known as zygote intra-fallopian transfer. Here is a point. Zygote intra-fallopian transfer is a method. Right? If it is beyond the 8 blastomeres, so at that stage we call it as here the embryo. At that condition, here this embryo should not be transported into the fallopian tube. Instead of transporting into the fallopian tube, then the embryo more than 8 blastomeres stage is get introduced into the uterus part. In that case, we call that here embryo transfer technique is known as intrauterine transfer. Here the point to be noted, intrauterine transfer. In such a case, what you do? See this. This here wall of the uterus, which includes the 3 layers. Now here the zygote, it travels down. If the zygote has got more than 8 blastomeres, then that condition we can consider as the embryo, and this embryo is introduced into the uterus. It is introduced into the uterus. Then this embryo transfer technique, which is followed by IVF or test tube baby, is known as intrauterine transfer. So the embryo transfer takes place in the 2 different ways. So at an 8 blastomere stage, we do go with a fallopian tube known as ZIFT, zygote intrafallopian transfer. More than 8 blastomere stage, generally we do introduce into the uterus, then we call it as here intrauterine transfer. So this is one of the here technique is available to us. Now let us see the next type of here ARTs in a detailed way. Right, coming to the second type of assisted reproductive technologies, it includes AI method. The AI here stands for artificial insemination, and here it stands for artificial insemination. You all know the technical meaning of the insemination. During the coitus time, if the male releases the sperms or ejaculation, if it is done in a female genital tract, and this entire process is known as insemination. It takes place naturally during the coitus time. But here the problem it arises when the male fails to here copulate the female is one important problem. Then the insemination is naturally will not take place. When the second condition, if the male semen consists of very fewer sperms, in that case also here it is not possible for the natural insemination process as well as the fertilization process also. In these 2 conditions, generally we do adapt this AI method. What are the 2 conditions? First one, if the male fails to copulate the female is one condition. When the male is suffering from oligospermia, a technical one, if they have very fewer number of sperms in their semen, natural hair insemination will not be taken place. In such a condition, we do go with this artificial insemination process. In this, generally the semen is collected from the here husband or the donor, and the semen is artificially injected into the vagina of a female or uterus of a female. This entire process is known as artificial insemination, and this artificial insemination is of two types. One is here known as artificial insemination husband, and whereas the second one is known as artificial insemination donor. So here it depends upon the here sperm from which you are collecting is classified into AIV and here AIH. If at all the semen or the sperm is collected from husband, generally you do go with this artificial insemination husband. If the husbands here the sperms are not in a good condition, then if they are here not able to produce good sized and here healthy sperms, in such a cases generally people will go with the sperm of a donor. Then if the sperm is collected from the donor, we call it as here AID. If at all it is get collected from the husband itself, then we call it as here the AIH. In this case, what happens, let us see. So with the help of here a thin polyethylene catheter here is used in this. A thin polyethylene here catheter means a tube. A thin polyethyl catheter is used, a tube is used. With the help of the tube, you do two things. One, here you do release the sperms, introduce the sperms into the vagina is one thing. If not, these sperms are here get released into the here uterus of a female or a woman. And here the point to be noted, if at all these sperms are get releases into the uterus, and this AI is otherwise here known as here intrauterine here insemination. So it has got another name IUI. What is happening here? The insemination is taking place within the uterus. So that another name for this AI is given. That another name is known as intrauterine insemination. So when this insemination is successfully done, then the sperm can here reach the fallopian tube and it can meet the ovum. Finally it leads to here formation of the zygote, so that the remaining process of here pregnancy will be continued. So this is the technique that is available to us. Then what will be the success rate of this one? Generally the success rate of here this artificial here insemination, it ranges from 20 to 40% of here cases will be get successful in this case. So this is all about here artificial insemination, one of the here technique that is available to us. And thereafter here the next technique, let us see now in a detail. Please sir. But coming to the third technique that is available to the couple in order to have their children, here is GIFT, gamete intrafallopian transfer. And as I said, it stands for gamete intrafallopian transfer. You know that here intra means inside, fallopian means a fallopian tube, we are all transferring. Here the point to be noted is gamete. And what does this gamete here means? Since we completed successfully the reproductive system, so we are all aware about the gametes means. There are two types of gametes are available. One is a male gamete and here another one is a female gamete. Coming to the animals, the male gametes are known as the sperms and the female gametes are known as the ovum. Then what do we do in this case? Generally, we do collect the gametes from the here either from a wife or a donor. Meanwhile, here we do collect it from here either from the husband or the donor, and the sperms and ovum are here allowed to enter into the fallopian tube, so that there is a chances of here taking part of fertilization within the living organism body. Here you have to think about this one. In this, which kind of here fertilization is taking place? In vivo fertilization. In vivo fertilization is the one which takes place. Then what happens, as I here said earlier, if you take the fallopian tube, so with the help of here certain kind of here the instrument, generally the sperms as well as ovum will be get released directly into the fallopian tube. Into the fallopian tube we are all injecting. So with a laparoscopy, just above the distal end of the fallopian tube, almost 4 centimeters here above the distal end of the fallopian tube, the gametes like a sperm and here the ovum are here introduced in the fallopian tube. So when they both are get introduced here, generally it creates a natural condition so that it leads to the fertilization process, resulting of that zygote will be formed. And these zygotes can allow to develop within the same mother, or else the zygotes that are all formed like this can be collected from the mother, and that can be get transferred to the some other here people also. And they are here the people who bear or who have the comfortable uterus for the growth of the embryo of the other here couple, and they are known as surrogate mothers. Here you can see here. Then the surrogate mothers they are used to known as. So in this case, what we do, the embryos are gets collected from other couple, and these embryos are get introduced into the uterus of another woman who has got a healthy uterus, so that the baby of some others will grow in the mother here, this mother whom we generally used to call as the surrogate mothers. So this is a latest trend is going on in the modern world, but this surrogate method that we adopt in case of animals, that we will study more detailedly in the further coming classes. So here, as I said, in this case, generally we do collect here this one, the sperm, the gametes, or they all get introduced in the fallopian tubes. Henceforth, we used to call it as here gamete intra-fallopian transfer. Coming to here, this method, success rate, it includes here 37 to 40% of here success rate of this one here it takes place. So this is one more important method that is available to us. Now let us see here and another and the last here method that is available to us here in order to have a children. Coming to the fourth technology that is available to us is known as ICSI, Intra cytoplasmic sperm injection. Then what happens in this? Generally we do collect the sperm either from a husband or a donor, and this sperm is directly injected into the ovum cytoplasm of wife or a donor. So here in which cases generally you do go with this ICSI, and here there are different kind of conditions are there in which generally you do go with this. And here first condition in a male is oligospermia. If at all male has got very fewer number of sperms, then there is a less chances for fertilization. In that, in order to here increase the successful rate of the fertilization process, we do adapt this intracytoplasmic sperm injection method. And the second condition is blockage. I said already, the afferentia system in a male testes will be taken blocked, and if the blockage is taken place in such a kind of tubule system, then the sperm cannot travel into the gas difference, thereafter it will not be get ejaculated out, so that successful insemination will not be taken place. So in that condition, generally you do go with the ICSI system. Thereafter the another one is if antibodies, I said in the previous class, in the semen of a male consists of anti-sperm antibodies. So it includes immunoglobulin G, A, here in such a kind of here antibodies are present. Even in such a cases also, generally you can go with this method. So anti-sperm antibodies in such a cases. Then thereafter here congenital absence of vas efferentia or vas deferens. By birth itself, the male here do not have the vas deferens as well as vas efferentia. When these two tubule systems are not present, there is no chances of here the sperm to get ejaculate out. So naturally fertilization will be get obstructed. Even in such a cases, directly you can collect the sperm from the donor or the husband, so that we can go for ICSI technique. Thereafter here unexplained infertility is another condition. Here male will be here healthy and he will be perfect in all the aspects. Even the female also healthy and perfect in all aspects. They do not have any problem. Even there the fertility will not be taking place. That condition we generally used to know as here unexplained infertility. Even in such a cases we can go with this method. Thereafter failure of fertilization in IVF. I already explained about this IVF technique in the beginning of this lesson itself. So in vitro fertilization, or else we call it as test tube baby. Even in some cases there is a chances of here failure of this IVF. And coming to here the IVF here, the success rate is less than 20%. It is less than 20%. So there is more chances of here failure of IVF technique also. In such a cases, generally you do go with this technique. Thereafter, fertilization failures. Naturally, the fertilization takes place in the fallopian tube. So, in some cases, this natural fertilization also it doesn't take place. In all these conditions, generally we do adapt with a new technique, and that technique is known as ICSI technique. Now, how it takes place, I will explain in a detail way. And here you do collect here the ovum from the wife or a donor, that you know very well. And this ovum is get hold in a position without moving anywhere with the help of micropipette. This is what the micropipette is. Thereafter, we do collect the sperm from here the husband or a donor, and a single sperm is required to us in this case. So we do go with a sperm, or else we can use of here spermatid also. No issue at all. The spermatid. And this spermatid is directly injected into the cytoplasm. The cytoplasm of a woman. Here a ovum, cytoplasm of the ovum of a woman. Generally it is get injected with the help of a tube, and this is known as injecting or injection pipette. So directly the sperm then can enter into the cytoplasm, and successfully here the fertilization will be taken place. So it generally leads to the formation of a zygote, and then this zygote is here get introduced into the female uterus, so that here chances of here getting pregnancy. So the fertilization here percentage will be here 60 to 70% the fertilization is get successful in this case. Whereas here the success rate of getting pregnancy again lies in between here again 20 to 40%. So chances for pregnancy, getting the pregnancy. So this technique is known as intra cytoplasmic sperm injection. Now we happen to see what are the conditions in which generally you will go with this here method, then how the procedure is taken part in this intracytoplasmic sperm injection, what is the success rate of this one we happen to see now in a detail way. So these are all the techniques now we are all here going through in order to have a children. So all these techniques together are known as assisted reproductive technologies. Right. Then what are all the here limitations of these technologies? What is the remedy for these technologies? Let us see now here in a detailed way. Students, as of now, we studied more detailedly about various types of reproductive here technologies, assistant reproductive technologies. Then it has got their own limitations. What are all the limitations of these technologies? Let us see now here. The first and foremost one, these techniques requires here extremely high here precision handling specialist is required, and this is one important thing. Here they will require a specialized professional is required in order to carry out this one is one thing, and these here highly specialized professionals are not available all the areas. One of the here limitation of these ARTs. Whereas the second one here, these are require even highly expensive here instruments also. It requires the expensive instrumentation also. Here, one more thing where it is not possible to have these kind of two things in all the areas, all the cities in India is one thing. Thereafter here, these, though they are all available, these are all available here in a very few centers in our country. As I said in the earlier point, it is not possible to have all the areas. Very few centers only, they are all available in India. This is another important limitation. Thereafter here, it is not affordable to all because it is a highly expensive process. So the middle class and here lower middle class families cannot bear here to have this kind of here ARTs. Since it is a highly expensive one, it is not possible to here available all the people is one thing. Thereafter, it includes another important thing. Here is an emotional, religious as well as the social factors are there which impides allowing these kind of techniques. So these three are the very important limitations related to these ARTs. One I said here, highly here specialist personality or professionals are required to us, whereas the second one is highly expensive here instrumentation also available to us, and thereafter here the third point is they must be available in all the cities. It is not possible. Very fewer centers only available in our country, and even then here it includes a lot of emotional, social and here ethical factors are impairing in go for these here ARTs. Then what is the remedy for that? So as we have all these problems, then remedy for this is, see this one, in our India we have such a kind of remedy. See, there are a lot of orphans are there in our India. Here the important point, there are a lot of here orphan children are there in our India, and thereafter here destitute children also there in our country. Then orphan means here those who do not have the parents, and they are known as the orphan children. Whereas the destitute here children in the sense those who do not have get their food, shelter, clothing and all, they are all here wandering in the streets, and such a kind of people are more in India. If we really want to have a parenthood, better you can adopt a child from a orphan homes, and even here destitute children can be here adopted. It will be here a right solution in order to have a parenthood. So this is a remedy for this. So by following this one, we can give a solution for this infertility problem. And thereafter here some of the tests are available to us in order to identify the genetic disorders or the disorders of a here growing fetus in a mother's uterus. I will focus on these techniques that are all available to us in detailed way. So there are 4 techniques are there. Right, fetal disorders identification. So even after the successful fertilization and implantation, the growing fetus may have certain kind of disorders. They may be genetical disorders, there may be some physical disorders also. There are certain kind of here tests are available to us in order to identify the disorders of the fetus at the growing stage itself. If you find any here disorders in the fetus, so that we can go for the remedy, or else we can go for here MTPs, medical termination of pregnancies, that we studied in the previous session in a detailed way. So here 4 important here the tests are available to us. Among them, the first one here includes amniocentesis. So in the beginning of this chapter, reproductive health, we do study more detailedly about this amniocentesis. The amniotic fluid is collected, which consists of the cells of the fetus, and these cells are allowed to here culture in a laboratory condition, and those cells are here go for a karyotyping, so that we can study the nucleus of the cells, particularly it gives a genetic information to us. So that here we can identify any genetic disorders, any biochemical disorders if the fetus has got, so that we can go for a remedy, or else we can go for these abortions. Is one technique that is available to us. Well, the second one is here known as chorionic Willi sampling. Then when the baby is growing, around the baby you can happen to see one of the layer which is known as here chorion. This chorion develop the Willi. During this here test, generally the here physician sends a tube into the uterus through the vagina, cervix, and finally it enter into the uterus. Then they do collect some of the tissues here from this chorionic villi, and the tissue is here allow for here culturing, so that they do go for a karyotyping. So it helps for identification of the genetic disorders. It is an invasive method. Invasive method in the sense we are all injecting here the tube within the uterus, so that we are collecting the tissue of the baby. Then you are going for identification of the disorder. Thereafter the next one is non-invasive technique. In this technique, we are not injecting anything into the women body or a mother body, and here externally only we are here identifying here the baby growth, and we are identifying the disorders. And it includes here ultrasound imaging. This ultrasound imaging gives us the growing conditions of the fetus in a mother. Thereafter here, by collecting the blood from a mother, also you can identify the disorders of the fetus. Here the thing is, when the baby is growing, fetus is growing in a mother's uterus, there are some of the blood cells of the fetus here may get released into the bloodstream of a mother. So the mother's bloodstream may have got certain cells of a fetus. So that the fetus cells can be collected from the mother blood, so that here it is possible to identify the disorders of the baby with the help of the fetus cells that are all released into the female body. Thereafter here, the next one is a fetoscopy. In this, a small needle-like here tube which consists of here viewing scope is injected into the uterus. So it passes through the vagina, cervix, and finally reaches to the here uterus, so that the physician can directly happen to see the image or the entire fetus detailedly with this fetoscope. So with all these here techniques, generally here it is possible to us to identify a disorders of a growing fetus. So if you are noticed any here drawback or disorder in that, if it is possible, we will go for here remedy. If not possible, we will go for here abortions. So these are the different concepts, students. As of now, we studied from the chapter that is reproductive health. Hope you all understand all these concepts. Go through these lessons, and if you have any doubts, please send a comment to us, and so that we are able to here answer all your queries. Thank you all.